I don't need to make a statement because statements were made.
Yep. It's a nice thing to do. That says it all. Yeah.
Foot race to their sideline. Touchdown, Oregon!
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all wages, welcome back to the show. And boy, oh boy, we finally got a show, didn't we? This has been a wonderful bye week. Apparently, I took a bye week myself. And unfortunately, last weekend, or over the course of the weekend, I should say, I didn't quite get another episode of the show out. It's another sunglasses show because I'm still sort of recovering from the week. You know, it's very hard sometimes to do multiple things all at once and work a morning shift at a news television station because you have to get up very early, which means you have to go to bed very early. And you sort of feel rushed throughout the day more than if you had the typical 9 to 5 schedule. However, that's why you need to like, comment, subscribe, and share this show and follow along as we do things and get things done here. Because I could probably come out with a lot more content, and I could probably, as much as I hate saying the phrase content, but I could come out with a lot more videos, and a lot more can be done in terms of fun stuff as well, more involved stuff. Once again, I am planning on doing a documentary on the Oregon Ducks football team. I am going to travel up to Oregon in a few weeks to do some preliminary shooting and get my interviews locked in to then travel to do that as well on the side. So it's going to become somewhat of a busy time, more busy than it already is, but it's a good busy. But without a sort of typical 9 to 5, I should say typical adjacent, because the 40-hour work week is much more involved, I guess, than a typical office job working for a television news station. So it can be a little daunting to do things on the side because you have a bunch of people, especially like television journalists and news reporters, who this is their job, this is their life, it's a career gig. For some reason, they love television news a lot. I'm personally not really much of a fan of it, and most photographers I know are honestly just there to make some money while they pursue other things. But be on the lookout. Also, find the GoFundMe for Chasing Ships, Oregon Ducks' request for their first national championship, and donate to that too. I'm I'm all self-funded. I've bought all the equipment and done all the scheduling and everything. Film, shooting, editing will be all me. And so yeah, it's a very daunting task, but anything helps still, money-wise. But enough of the money grabbing. We're going to talk about the Ducks and their game, Civil War game. I still call it the Civil War, and I will gladly debate anybody about the naming of it, but that's another show for another day. The Civil War game that was played in September, which is usually weird because it's usually played just before, really the end of the regular season, not just before bowl season, but the end of the regular season. It's usually the last game. And this year that's going to be reserved for the Ducks' other rival, the Washington Huskies. But the Ducks as a program had moved around their game against Hawaii, I believe, to keep this traditional game going. I know some fans aren't really a huge fan of the September rivalry game like that. I think it's more important that the game continue. I don't really care what part of the season it is. I think it's kind of cool, actually, that you're not sort of shoehorning it in between Thanksgiving. Plenty of people, especially on the East Coast, have played their rivalry games, their classic rivalry games, during this time of the year. So it's not really something that's really that crazy or that far out of left field. I think it's kind of fun that way. However, you definitely still won't get those classic games like the War of the Roses and stuff. Those civil wars that determine everything when it comes to. Hold on, how's my shot look? Okay. When it comes to, sorry, let me adjust. Oops, wrong way. The Civil War game and how it comes to, make or breaking a season. But I think this also, there's so much that changed this year. It was hard to keep up in terms of the conference realignment and all that. So I wouldn't be surprised though, since depending on whether or not this ass whooping, I know plenty of Beaver fans that are saying just kill the game, which is hilarious to me because about a week ago they were all talking smack about how the Ducks are going to get pushed around and beaten up. But suddenly they didn't like the results, so they're going to throw a temper tantrum and say just quit the game. They're going to take their ball and go home because they're losing the one-on-one match or whatever, or one-on-one game. When you're at the local playground and you play someone one-on-one in basketball, and you have that kid that's talking a lot of smack, so you play them and then you beat them, or are beating them and beating them pretty good, and then they're the ones who brought their ball, so they just grab the ball and say, this isn't fair, and they just walk home, and you're like, okay, whatever, man. They rage quit a long-standing traditional game that surpasses 2 centuries. The 1800s, and the late 1800s is when it started, went through the 1900s, and now we're in technically, I guess, the 3rd century that this game has played, really. Not chronologically. It hasn't been going on for 300 years, but 1800s, 1900s, 2000s. I think that's pretty funny. And to those Beaver fans, it's much deserved. To the good Beaver fans, I'm sorry, but I think a lot of the concerns that the realistic Beaver fans had are fair, and those should be addressed. And the unrealistic Duck fans are sort of worse the other way. I'm going to be fair, because now, look, let's get into the game. So, offensive line played much better than the first 2 games. Much better. They found a lineup that worked, and worked very well. And what did I say the last episode? Let Dillon Gabriel ball out. Well, he balled out, and look what we got with that. So, that's a good sign. That is a sign of better things to come. And I think that that it is one step in the direction of me being sold on Dillon Gabriel. Again, really no major complaints about Gabriel, I think with last year with Bo Nix, as we're seeing him in the pros now, everyone was saying, let the guy run, let him run. And basically the offensive play calling was designed for Bo to not really run and just be a pocket passer. Because one, they wanted to build his draft stock, and so they wanted to basically showcase his arm. And 2, they wanted to show off his draft stock by not getting him injured. Because, again, as most Duck fans the hard way learned in 2007, was Dennis Dixon probably had a pretty good trajectory in the pros. He had a pretty good deep ball. He had a pretty good release. He was fine. It finally clicked for him his senior year, and he busted open his ankle or his knee. And I think that probably hurt him in the draft stock. So the MO, again, the same thing was for Herbert with Cristobal in the Cristobal era. The MO for those quarterbacks that are likely going to go to the pros and maybe pretty high up in the pros, the draft, they're going to protect the QB, which is fine. Protect the QB, still let him make plays and stuff, when they can or whatever. And keep them from running though, and keep them healthy and keep them fine. The problem is though is last year you had the offensive line that Oregon had, and you had Bo Nix sort of being Bo Nix. Now this year's a different story. We lost a couple O linemen due to injury and graduation last year, so there were some pieces that need to be made. Dylan is pretty decent in the pocket in the sense that when he's given time, he throws a beautiful ball. And as you saw in that one play to Trayshawn Holden, that was a dime. That was an absolute dime. And so that's not really an issue either. I think he'll be able to showcase his arm off pretty good. I don't like pinning quarterbacks into being a hero ball, having to play hero ball. I think that's actually what helped Bo Nix at Oregon versus Auburn. At Auburn, he had to play hero ball, and he didn't have to at Oregon. And he was able to sort of relax and play his game, and it worked. With Gabriel, he can play. Sorry, there's a fly. He can play hero ball decently enough, but when you sort of let him sit back and throw, he'll throw, and he's pretty darn good at it. But the big distinction is that option play. That really kind of, I think, made the game there. That option play was 64-yard touchdown from Gabriel. He was able to use his legs. We haven't seen that in quite a while, to be honest. A running QB getting sort of more than a 20-yard touchdown run. That was great to see. And you can see that swag kind of inject into Gabriel's body after that play. You saw flashes of it at Boise during the Boise game. But this is where I think Dylan really got fired up. And that's good to see. And it was good to see him use his legs because he seems to be deceptively fast. He's a shorter guy, so it's kind of like seeing Kyler Murray run. But he can run, and he did. And he kind of made that game in the sense of it sucked the air out of Reeser and sort of reestablished this is what it could be for you guys the rest of the game, and it kind of was. And it kind of also reestablished this offense actually is pretty dangerous, even though we haven't seen it for 2 games. Wow, oh yeah, it's there. And we saw flashes of it really more against Boise. With Idaho, it was just flat all around. And yeah, sure, we put up 24 points, but I don't think our touchdowns were over 10 yards. They were all, the little goal line pushes. So we only saw really flashes of that against Boise, of what it could be, and it all kind of came together offensively for the Ducks versus Oregon State. And the timing of that could not have been more perfect on when it clicked. I think that's fantastic. Obviously, as a Duck fan going against a heated rival. So the statement was made for now. And luckily, that statement was beautifully made in Corvallis, Oregon. The defense, though, played average. They played their average game. They were pretty good in the pass defense. They seemed Bryce Bedeker was a monster. He flew around. He made tackles all over the field. He made great open field plays against screens, which we'll get to that in about 15 seconds, and made open field tackles that kept a lot of yak off the field for Oregon State. No complaints about him. It's nice to see sort of an old school linebacker come back or, step on the field and really flourish. And that was nice to see. We always have that sort of diamond in the rough player. Oftentimes they are on the linebacking core. When you think of guys like Kiko Alonso or Joe Walker, Wesley Mallard, not Rashad Bowman, he was kind of a star, but Kevin Mitchell. You had guys on the linebacker core that were kind of diamonds in the rough. No, they didn't really have a lot of star power behind their name. They weren't already established superstars from before, in the sense that like Bassa, like he was kind of just an average linebacker, but he developed into a superstar. But you have guys like Bedeker that sort of come out of nowhere and they immediately make an impact, and it's like, wow, this guy's become a star. So that's nice to see. The injury from Bassa was pretty noted in there because on a lot of screen plays, the Ducks were out of sorts. They looked lost. Screen plays, it seems throughout the year so far, that's their weakness. They seem to not read them fast enough to where they realize, oh, it's a screen. I think a lot of the defense has gotten very spoiled with a relentless pass rush, and one that has built big time even from last year. We may have lost why do I keep forgetting his name? Because I keep thinking Jordan Birch because he's currently on the team. But the other guy on the other side of Birch last year, oh my gosh, why do I keep blanking on him? He's a beast, and he was like one of my favorite players last year. It was Jordan Birch. Brandon Dorless. We lost Dorless, which was a huge loss from last year. But the Jamari Caldwell pickup, Derek Harmon pickup was huge. He has made an impact since he stepped foot on campus. I am happy to see that. I was hoping for that when I saw that he was going from one Big Ten school to now another Big Ten school. So I had high-ish expectations for him to be an impact player. He's been getting his hands up, swatting down passes, but I think the linebacking core in the secondary has gotten a little spoiled from having a pretty decent enough D-line that they think, this is just their typical time where they're just going to bum rush and get a sack and get the pressure, when in reality it was a screen pass setup. And so they're not reacting fast enough to say, screen, get after the guy who's getting the ball. Take away, if you're a corner, you engage that block, and then you get around the block. And when you're a safety, it's like a run read. You go straight at that gap and try to take down that guy. The linebackers will be there to help too. The reason why corners engage that block and then try to shed that block, if the block's already been set up, is obviously you're trying to take out that guy from blocking that second level, those linebackers and safeties that are supposed to be your help. And also you engage that block by on the outside and pushing that receiver to go inside. Because, again, your safeties, your linebackers will be there, but it also gives the time for the linemen to read and react finally and get them from the inside out. So you have that issue there, I think, right now, where those reads aren't happening fast enough. So Oregon State stayed in this game for the first half, basically, and they did that with a lot of screen plays and some quarterback runs for sure, but mostly those screen plays were sort of burning the Ducks in that. I like to see, especially with the Big Ten coming up after this bye week, we'll hopefully get rested. We'll maybe get some injured players back, and we'll head into Big Ten conference play against UCLA. But definitely with those screenplays and stuff, you're going to see that a lot with Ohio State because Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator. But you're going to see a lot of that now because now Chip Kelly has basically brought that playbook with him to Ohio State with some loaded receivers. And you actually saw that last Saturday against Marshall, where they popped off a typical screenplay, but it popped off into like a 70-yard touchdown because that guy just took off and he was fast. And obviously it's against Marshall, but if those guys get past the second level off those screen routes, gone. That's just the way it is. It's like Jaden Lamar. What a great play with the Civil War that really iced that. That was beautifully done. He took the ball. He found that hole, that gap that was created by the blocking. The blocking was great. just straight down the field, gone, touchdown. I liked seeing that because a lot of times, too, you have guys that just dance around and tap dance trying to find a gap, but he was basically like a running back running through the gap between the tackles. He saw it, and he shot right through it. In fact, I think if I remember correctly on the tape, he had a blocker that was sort of getting drifting at him, like drifting towards him from the hash mark towards the sidelines, and he pushes him out of the way because, like, this is my gap. I'm gone. Sorry. He pushes him out of the way, and he goes, and he makes that. So I like seeing, again, those routine plays turning into big chunks or touchdowns because and I think, though, that comes with, one, the offensive line blocking for Gabriel, and he's able to take those shots down the field. Before that, you noticed that teams like Idaho and Boise State knew that Gabriel didn't have a whole lot of time to throw, and so the compensation for that is to throw quick screeners to get the ball out of Gabriel's hand right away and get it to your playmakers quicker and hope for the best, basically. And what they can do is that immediately when the corners see that formation and make that read, they're not going to backpedal. They're going straight at the blocks. The second the ball snapped, they're going at their receiver, the receiver who's not catching that ball on the screen, and then everyone else is crashing towards that receiver that catches it, and or even then you'll see a lot too. The corners know this receiver's not going to catch me. I'm just going to blow right by him. I won't even be really blocked, or it'll cause a block that makes a penalty. So I know which receiver's getting the ball. I'm going straight at him. And they play very aggressively on those screens, and you don't get very far. But if you want screens to go very far, you got one. Usually the idea is you run the ball to open up the deep passing, because you want them to stack the box and then come after the QB. Or the flip side of that is you want to throw screen routes and then sort of draw them in along with the run game. You want to draw them in, but if you don't have a run game, you kind of have to do this. I'm going to do this a third time. You're going to draw them in, thinking screen pass, screen pass, screen pass. Then you take a shot deep. But it doesn't always work. So it was good to see that. It was good to see a good run game as well. Not just Dylan Gabriel, but I think Jordan James had a day. Whittington was running like Whittington. I think that Boise State game really helped. He held on to the football until the whistle was blown. But he was running strong like the Noah Whittington we all know and love. So that was good to see. There was so much improvement on the offensive side of the football, and that was all because of the offensive line. And we knew that. But the offensive line is much improved with that lineup. Hopefully with Bedford maybe coming back in some capacity by the end of the season, it'll be even better. Who knows? Maybe this lineup is just so good that they sort of stick with it. They obviously like to rotate guys in and out. I think that you should probably make sure that your rotated lineup that you have is better than the other lineups. I'm not trying to throw any shade at anybody or anything, but that's what you need, because if you're going to rotate people out, they might find themselves in a situation like, I don't know, it's 4th down and 1 on your 30-yard line. You're trying to go for the win, so you go for it in a short yardage situation. You want to make sure this lineup's going to get the proper enough push to do so. But yeah, so that was great to see. And it was finally a game that we won that I actually was in a good mood after we won. And it didn't feel like we lost. The Ducks lost. It felt like, yes, this is a great win. We finally, you know what? This was most of all, though, the statement that was being made with this was most of all that we left those past 2 weeks behind us. And again, though, I wasn't surprised. Honestly, I would have, even though we should have, I was expecting Oregon to lose to Boise, considering the history of Boise, the history of Oregon versus Boise. It was just like, you know what? We might drop this game, and it's not going to necessarily kill our season. It might. Who knows though? But that was a good, at least proof necessarily that the Ducks can overcome a certain level of adversity and end up winning a game, even if they play terribly. And so that's a good thing. Now, the defense, going back to the defense again, I know I'm sort of drifting back and forth, but it's sort of stream of consciousness right now. Let me check on the lighting. All right. I think it's all maybe a little brighter. Let's brighten it up a little. I think the sun's going down behind me, and that's why it's sort of getting a little more dark. My apologies for the dead air and all that. That didn't do that much better, but what are you going to do? Sorry. I also have a light over here, which is actually way brighter than I was expecting. That's partially the reason why I'm wearing sunglasses, to be honest. All right, lighting's fine enough. All right, I'm not gonna be too crazy about it. But anyway, while we were talking, again, so with Boise State, I'm going to drift back a week or so for now. With Boise State, you had Ashton Gianti. Again, like I said that last episode, it's one of those things where for any other running back, the stats that he put up was an incredible day, a career day. With guys like Gianti, that's basically an average day. And if you can hold a guy like that to an average day, it gives you a pretty decent chance of winning. Even though the Ducks sort of escaped via two incredible special teams miracles at this point, I think that did sort of help them win, was containing Gianti to an average day. With the Beavers, again, it was sort of, with the defense, it was a tale of two halves. It was two games because, again, they gave up like 14, 15 points in the first half. They were struggling with screens, and the Beavers were doing pretty decent running the ball. And the second half, though, Oregon finally, I think, found their groove in a way in defense and basically shut them out the whole game. They pitched a shutout in the second half, and did much better against the run and maybe against those screen plays. But two things aside from the screens and such with the defensive side, I would like to see more turnovers caused. I don't think that, if I remember correctly, there was maybe one interception at Boise. But the problem is I can't think of a turnover that happened against Boise. I remember Brandon Johnson's 2 picks with Idaho. And with Oregon State, there was no turnovers. That's going to need to happen a lot more, especially now that we're in Big Ten play. We have got the defense has got to cause turnovers. They got to figure it out. They gotta start ripping at the ball. They can still play stout and wrap up and tackle, but they gotta start maybe ripping at the ball. They gotta start crashing and ball hawking on the passing. But again, the secondary I think is doing okay for the most part. And but for sure, whatever that means, that more turnovers I think need to happen. You need to be able to cause turnovers with teams like Michigan because they're not going to throw the ball very much, as we saw last Saturday, which will then bleed into and you got to keep teams like Ohio State off the field offensively. You just have to, and the best way is turnovers. So that needs to change. And then the second one, which we will discuss with Michigan, is stopping the run. The Ducks have been a little bit suspect on stopping the run this year, which is odd because the last couple years or so, that was sort of their strong point, was stopping the run. Or at least being stingy against the run. They were pretty decent at playing the run game. This year, Not sure exactly what's happening. The lineups, again, are sort of the lineup changes on defense weren't as major as, say, maybe the offensive line. Again, we lost Dorless, but we did replace him with a couple people, and we'll have young talent also as well with that. While the Pac-12 may have been a pass-heavy conference, the Big Ten is not. And with teams like Michigan, who only threw for 34 yards that whole game, ended up beating USC because they were good at running the ball. And USC even played Michigan pretty well anyway, too, even on defense. But again, as far as the game progresses and progresses and progresses, you got to start landing those hits and being the team that hits the other team, that wears them down, and not the other way. So on defense, though, the Ducks definitely need to get more stingy at stopping the run. And again, I think that might come down to guys like Bossa hopefully being back because, again, he's the guy with the communication in his helmet. So he will probably be the one that will be quarterbacking that defense, or should be, and hopefully keeping everyone on their assignments. I think Bossa has become, obviously, we were all sort of saying this in the offseason, but I think even now it's proving more and more how important of a linebacker that he is, and what kind of special player that he is. And the Ducks really, hopefully, are building a linebacking core on the recruiting trail. I know we get all the flashy wide receiver news about 4- and 5-star receivers, but again, that was sort of my biggest complaint, and almost sort of what exposed that happened in the offensive line this last few games. Was one of the things I was noticing. I'm like, cool, we got cool running backs and cool receivers and everything, but where are all the linemen? Where are all the linemen being recruited? Where's the news about the 4-star offensive tackle? Where's the news about the 4-star inside-outside linebacker? Maybe I missed it. But those are certain parts of the team that if we built up in the way that, say, Tennessee has been building up, or Alabama, or a Georgia. Georgia has continuously, recently, very strong linebacking core. We could be on par with one of those teams. So I'm hoping that's what's happening, and I'm hoping that maybe the run defense will change once maybe Bossa is fully healthy and back in the mix. I know he was sort of sporadically maybe in the Civil War game, if I remember correctly, or even taken out early in the game. They tried to play him, and it just didn't work out. Yes, going into Big Ten world now after the bye week, we're going to need to be much stronger on the front seven and in the trenches for sure, and that comes down to run defense. So when you really think about it, this bye week, I know a lot of people complained that it was early, but we also got a bye week before Washington. At this point, I think it could not have been more perfectly timed for the Ducks. I'm trying not to say us or we, because I know people get crazy about that, and I know I'm not really a huge fan of it either. But for the Ducks, that bye week, honestly, at this point, could not have come at a better time. Because I don't know what happens in fall camp. I feel like when I watched the spring game, they were popping pads more than they were in the game so far this year. At the Civil War game, that was nice to see Jordan James lay the wood on a corner when he was going out of bounds. They were finally starting to pop pads a little bit, which is nice. I like hearing that plastic popping real nice, just like that mic. And I don't know, though. Maybe during training and fall camp and all that, they beat each other up a little too much. I don't know. But it is I feel like this is going to, and luckily, though, it doesn't seem like major season-ending injuries, besides maybe Jaleel Florence, the poor guy. if he came back healthy again, that would just be just incredible in terms of just adding to that secondary that's already there. But most of the people, though, including I think Bedford, this will give them a good chance to rest and heal up and get into game shape just a little bit more off a bye week. The people that are still playing right now that aren't injured, it'll be able for them to ice the bruises a little bit. And it's just a nice little reset coming off of a big win, a big statement win that the Ducks needed to make after 2 rough weeks. And hopefully the strategy of the coaching also will be assessed with just 1 week, a little bit extra of the schedule. And for me personally, my blood pressure was fantastic on Saturday, and I slept like a baby, and my stress levels were incredible. So that bye week helped, I think, a lot of fans as well. But the bye week again right before conference play, perfectly timed, I think, perfectly well done. So we'll see how that goes. But one good game does not a good team make, and this is the problem that a lot of Duck fans are falling into right now. They're saying we're so back. They're back to predicting national championship again. You know, they want to play Texas instead of we want Bama, you know, all the we want Texas stuff. You know, we can win it all this year. Bring it on, all this other type of stuff. Again, I don't know what some of these Duck fans do in their free time in terms of their home life, but I personally am not that much of a masochist. If they are, that's fine, well, and good. I hope their husbands and wives enjoy that. But for me, I'm still grounding myself in reality because, again, one good game does not a good team make. With it's a good foundation and a great freaking start. This was the start that I think we all wanted as fans. After playing Idaho, and hopefully we could have maybe beat up Boise just a little more, even though we got the win. Would have liked to see that play that was played with the Beavers against the other 2 squads before us. So there's still questions. Don't get it twisted. I still don't think this is our year to win it all. I think that I would be pleasantly surprised, obviously, if we got to the playoffs and made a deep playoff run and maybe won it all or whatever. And that would go down in the history books, frankly, for me, as a miracle season. And like the 2004 Red Sox. But again, I don't think the odds are there. This is year 3 of Lanning. We haven't quite seen his full recruiting abilities in the sense of what a team that he personally built looks like. We still have some of the Cristobal era stuff, but also not necessarily so much that as well. It's just that because it's the 3rd year, the old Lanning recruits aren't really seniors or anything yet. They're still developing, and then the new guys are coming in, and they will be developed, so on and so forth. And again, Kirby Smart didn't win his first national championship that went back-to-back until year 5. And in year 1 and 2, he barely, I think the first year he was under 500. Second year, he was barely 500. And then they had pretty decent winning season, another pretty decent winning season, and then they won it. I don't remember the exact stats on, the exact stats on that, but it took 5 years for Kirby Smart. And even Nick Saban has some down years. Because even when you build up the team in the first place, you still have to rebuild the team. And even back then it was more so because the NIL and the transfer portal wasn't so prevalent. And so, again, though, we'll come right back to it. I understand I repeat myself a lot, or I might drift a little bit Just bear with me. I'm trying to make this entertaining for everybody because I want you to watch the show or listen to the show. You know, if you're on your morning commute, I want you to be able to lock your phone and listen on YouTube or whatever. Should be a good show. I feel like it's all right. I'd listen to it if it wasn't me. But the questions with Oregon still remain. We don't know if this was the outlier game that we just played balls to the wall fantastic and the first 2 weeks are what the team really is. Or if the first 2 weeks were the aberration or the outlier and we're finally in our actual form against Oregon State. And that's how it's going to be the rest of the season. It's one game. There's no pattern that's developed yet. We don't know yet. So, again, this is a good start, but you have to continue. You got to clean up some of the stuff that needs to be cleaned up and build on the things that don't need to be cleaned up. Because, again, there's stuff on defense that really needs to tighten up. And like our rankings and stuff I looked up are not that great on defense. We need to be one of the top 5 defenses in the country statistically, and we're just not. And so the Ducks need to clean up a lot of stuff that they need to clean up, and they need to play tighter in a lot of ways. And if our offense finally clicks, let's build on that with the offensive line. All right, we got a good game, got some confidence built. We know what we're doing. We're clicking. Let's continue that, but see what else we can improve on, what else we can shave off, whatever edge we can shave off and make it even better. And on defense, again, how can we create more turnovers? How can we get more tackles for loss? How can we get more sacks? How can my linebackers create some impact? Like, there's great stuff to build on, but now we're off the starting block. But now we got to keep going faster each lap until the finish line. And so the dummy Duck fans out there need to stop with this natty nonsense, okay? Let's be honest. We haven't won it yet. We don't know what a national championship season for the Ducks look like in the first place. How can you predict it? And again, I'm just as eager. I'm making a documentary about it. I'm just as eager as you are to see it happen. I want it to happen. But we have to be real here. Because again, we could be like the Colorado fans where, everything Dion does, coaching decision-wise, everything Shedeur does, quarterback-wise, perfect. No problems whatsoever. And then under the surface, though, you're going 4-8. And hopefully this year, maybe they get better. But again, maybe not as vast of an improvement as this. You become sort of a cult member. And again, we have standards to uphold that we have created for ourselves. You know? Last week, or the week before last, Alabama beat up on USF, at least the final score. It was the Boise State week, actually, because I was going to talk about this on the last show. Alabama beat USF, like, what is it, 46-14 or something? On paper, you're like, wow, that was a blowout. But the game was pretty close until the fourth quarter. I think Alabama had scored like 28 points in the fourth quarter. And even the Alabama fans were pissed. They were saying that Alabama played like crap. But look at the score. It was a blowout. Well, it's because Alabama is Alabama. And they have Alabama standards. And you got to play like Alabama. Just because a win is a win or you got the win, it's fine. But like I said last week, when coaches have yelled at me or our team, the loudest and most epic rants that we've ever faced was when we won. It wasn't when we lost. So we really got to change that as fans in the culture, that we need to sort of be realistic about the team, and we also can't be one of those people that's like an enabler. Oh, a win is a win. At least you won, blah, 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 blah. There are ways to improve always. And we have a good start now after 2 games, and then the third with Oregon State. We now have a good start. But again, we don't know this team yet in terms of viewers. The team, I believe, knows who the team is. They've been trying to execute that for the last 3 weeks, and they executed it on week 3. But hopefully, this is indicative of further improvement. But again, we can't, as Nick Saban says, we can't ingest the rat poison as fans too. The team is not the only ones that get rat poisoned. With all the media hype, literally it took 15 minutes after the box score of the Oregon State game. Even the media again, Oregon is so back. Here it is. It's begun. All this other kind of stuff. We don't know yet. We just don't know. Once maybe 4 or 5 more games have been played, we can then sort of make a determination on this team. But this is one game. We have to the Ducks have to build on that, and a pattern has to then be created. So we'll see. I am looking forward to that. I'm hoping the play increases. I'd like to see even tighter play against UCLA. I think this game again though will be a better game than anticipated. But who knows? Maybe the Ducks will come out guns blazing. I'm really only going to determine what type of team this is until we see how we play against Ohio State. Because again, as a longtime Duck fan, and other longtime Duck fans know, we play certain teams throughout the schedule, and then we have that one game that's supposed to be the big game. That's supposed to be the game of the century and going to be the program-changing win. Whether it's against like a USC or Ohio State or a Michigan or a LSU or a Georgia, whatever, those teams. Or, like Ohio State in the national championship game way back when, or Auburn in the national championship game the first time. That was supposed to be sort of the statement, like the Ducks are here and all that kind of stuff. And the Ducks either just collapse. Again, I'm not calling them choke artists. Or they get a wake-up call like, other teams are very good and they're ready to play. You don't win based on wishful thinking from the media or hype from the media. Either one of those things. So I will make my determination on what this team looks like once they play Ohio State. Because that's the game where that team is going to be made. Will be made or broken. Will it be a close game? Will we win? Will it be a close game where we win? Will it be a blowout where we win? Or the other way around? If it's a close game, if we lose, so what? Luckily our season's not necessarily ruined. It would still be nice to get a win. But if we get beaten down, beaten up, and beat around, that's a problem. And then we'll all have to hear these exposed tweets on the internet. Because we all lied to ourselves and didn't assess how the team actually is. So, those are my initial thoughts, I guess, going from the wonderful Civil War win and how we played, and going into the future and the Big Ten play that's going to be upcoming after the bye week. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. Hopefully I can make more videos in the future when I do miss something, and I can cover that when need be. But I think that will be the end of it for me today. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also follow my video game channel, SDP Sean Doesn't Play. I am in the middle of dealing with the laptop issue, so hopefully I can be live streaming in the future very quickly in the future soon, hopefully. And follow me on all the socials, SDP Studios, or just search for it and you'll find it at some capacity. I don't remember all my handles. I think my Twitter handle is different from the rest, but if you search that, you'll probably find it. But yeah, so do all that. Subscribe, like, and comment on these videos, like I said. And thank you for watching, and go Ducks.